Thank you all for joining us today on our first webinar in a series of webinars that we're planning to put on for Jira admins and IT professionals. Again, if you're using Jira Cloud already, amazing. If you're in the process of looking at Atlassian as potentially a new tool set, also amazing. This is a webinar series we're putting on. We want it to be educational, giving you tips and tricks around how do you manage Jira Cloud, potentially jumping into other Atlassian products here and there, all very much cloud focused. But great to have everybody on the line today. Again, I mentioned it before, but my name is Peter Kerrigan. I'm the head of customer success at Solcoro, and we're thrilled to be hosting this webinar today. So today's session is going to be learning about all the different ins and outs of Jira Cloud, what's under the hood, some of the best practices for what you should look out for, tips and tricks, key elements to keep an eye on when you think about managing Jira Cloud or using Jira Cloud. And we're really, really stoked to have one of the world's top experts, if I can say that, to walk through this journey with us today. So Alex, welcome. Alex Ortiz, how's it going?
Pretty good, thank you. I don't know that I would classify myself as a world's top expert, but I appreciate the gesture.
Yeah, there you go. You can. It's all from a good spot, Alex. We appreciate you joining us today. We appreciate your expertise, as I know many people appreciate your expertise.
Yeah.
When we were scheduling this, there was definitely a bunch of excitement about the fact that we were going to be able to host you. So it's really wonderful that it worked out and that we're finally here today.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I'm excited to show folks maybe some of the more lesser known parts of cloud administration.
Definitely. I mean, my background, we've talked, I was a consultant for a bit, but even some of the things that you've mentioned to me already, I know I'm going to learn some stuff today. So I hope that the other folks on the call are also going to learn a bunch of things today. So yeah, great to have you here. On Alex's behalf, I'll give a little bit of a brief introduction. He's an Atlassian expert. If you know Alex already, I'm sure you know that he's all over the Atlassian community, very well known. But he has some more specific background. He runs one of the largest YouTube channels dedicated to Atlassian training. So if you're looking for some more training, go check out his videos. He's also the co-host of the Jira Life, which is a podcast all about the good, the bad, and the ugly within the Atlassian ecosystem. And if you've been in the Atlassian ecosystem for any period of time, you know that there are various good, bad, and ugly elements of the ecosystem, but lots of good, don't worry.
Lots of good.
Yeah. And I know, Alex, too, you also just hosted one of the largest Atlassian community-led events in Long Beach, California. It was the Builder Summit.
Yep.
So that's awesome. And I know that there's already talks around that recurring again next year and what that's going to look like. This year it had over 150 attendees over a 3-day period, which is amazing. And also, too, you are a published author and recently launched the Atlassian Everything community with Josh Golasinski. So
Yeah, no,
busy man.
that was just the last 8 weeks.
Yeah. Geez. Yeah, busy man. That's very impressive. But yeah, thrilled to have you on today. I don't want to take up too much time because I know there's lots of different things that we want to talk about. So I think without further ado, I can hand it over to you. Everybody wants to hear you talk and not me. So take it away, Alex.
Thank you. Yeah, so I use Jira a lot. I probably spend on average 12, 14, maybe 15 hours a day in the Atlassian tools. And there's some common pain points and some common just things that most people aren't aware of, because it's one of those things where you really only go and set it up once, or maybe you got a job and it was already set up for your organization, this specific with cloud organization. And so I just want to talk about some security concerns and some common things that I think often get overlooked. In the cloud, there's this notion of, okay, now that we're in the cloud, we don't have to worry about servers, and we don't have to worry about database backups, and we don't have to worry about patching our vulnerabilities, right? Because Atlassian takes care of all of it. And that's mostly true, right? We are using someone else's servers at this point, right? When you're in the cloud, but there's still a shared responsibility, and there's still a couple of things that you as a Jira administrator, and more specifically cloud administrator of the Atlassian tools, you need to be aware of. And I'm just going to walk you through some, again, these areas that I see a lot of the teams that I work with, the teams that I consult with, they often miss these things. And when I come in, they're just like huge aha moments of like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have known this because it would have saved me a lot of time or a lot of money. And I just want to walk through some of those nuances. Now, for full disclosure, because this is an enterprise capability, some of these things I'm just going to be able to describe and kind of show you Atlassian's documentation. But whenever possible, we're going to be in the tool and I'm going to show you everything I possibly can. I just don't have everything set up because, again, I'm a team of one, not running a 10,000 person company. But this should apply for literally almost any Atlassian Cloud customer out there. So yeah, so why don't we jump into a little screen share, because I love being in the tools. I think one of my favorite things is showing people. I like to tell people I'm from the show me state, Peter. Although I only spent 36 months, no, 32 months. I forgot how many years. It was it was like 32 months inside the show me state. So I definitely will tell people that I'm from the show me state, which, in case you didn't know, is the slogan for Missouri. It's the
Okay,
show
I
me
was
state.
going to ask.
Yeah.
I wasn't familiar with that term. Maybe that's just me as a Canadian, but now I know. Missouri
Yeah,
is
Missouri's tagline is "Show me state."
okay. Very
So
nice.
you got to show me. So let me show you what all this stuff is. So let's start off with one of my favorites. If you can share my screen, pull up my screen here.
Yeah.
So this right here is called the app access settings. Now, Atlassian has done a wonderful job, wink, wink, at updating the entire admin.atlassian.com to match the look and feel of Jira, Confluence, and Loom, right? The teamwork collection. And so what used to be a little bit better organized, I think is now less organized, but here we are, and we have our admin.atlassian.com. So for everybody watching, right, this is the place where you go to do all of your cloud administration with respect to at least Jira and Confluence, which are the two big ones, some JSM, and then some of the other tools like Bitbucket and Loom. I think Atlassian's still working on folding everybody in. But if you're using Jira Product Discovery, Confluence, this is going to be the tool that you're going to be inside of. Okay. And so if you've never seen it, then you've probably never accidentally tried to add a user, I guess, because one of the biggest differences between the data center versions of Jira and the cloud is that all user management and then a lot of security happens outside of the applications. And so it happens outside of Jira, it happens outside of Confluence, and we're actually in this like extra area called admin.atlassian.com / and then the name of your organization. So again, this may be new, right? If you're new to the cloud, this is definitely a different way of managing your products, but this is the way we do it in the cloud. All right. So with that said, and I am keeping an eye out here in the chat. So if at any point any of you have any questions, feel free to drop any questions. I'd be more happy to answer them. But let's get into the big one. And so the common problem that I find is that a lot of users, what typically ends up happening is they go and look at their user list, and then they start seeing a bunch of people that are in their user list. And they're like, who are these people, right? And so if I go to another one, I have a couple of Jiras. I have a couple of different ones, right? I can go to this, I can go to our user management, again, admin.atlassian.com. And you tend to just find users, right? There's just all these people that are in here. And from time to time, you're just going like, okay, so how did all these people get here, right? How did these people show up? Because it's not random, right? Most of the time, an administrator of some sort invites people to the cloud, right? So whether there's multiple ways to invite, but under the user section, there's an invite users button here, and you can physically invite people and grant them a license. Cool. But what I find that typically blindsides administrators is that they start to see names that they don't recognize. Then they start to see names from other organizations or other email domains, or maybe even sometimes Gmails and Yahoos and everything else. And they're like, how in the world are these people getting a license to our products? Right. And it's a very troubling problem, because for every user that uses your Jira or your Confluence, you're essentially paying for them a license, right? And these licenses go up 5 to 10% every October, right? And so it's a surefire way to, inflate your bill and get some rogue people in there that just start randomly showing up. And so the reason that this happens is because Atlassian has something called an app access settings. And normally what happens is your domain, right? So your company, the company you work at, it's going to be here, right? I have apetech.me, but if you've ever done any M&As or mergers and acquisitions, then it's just going to show you a bunch of different domains. It all just depends on your particular settings. But for each domain, and This domain also can increase anytime you send an invite to somebody who doesn't have who has a different domain email, right? And so Jira, for your shopping convenience, will automatically add that new domain here and automatically grant them a lot of stuff. And so it's convenient for you, super convenient for Atlassian because they're making a lot more money now. But at the end of the day, when it comes time to renewals or you're reviewing your user list, you're like, uh-oh, where did all these people come from? So let me show you how they're coming in. So for every domain, again, Atlassian does this for your convenience, and I'll put convenience in very big air quotes. There's a list of all the products that your company purchases, right? So you got Compass, Confluence, Jira Product Discovery, Jira Service Management, Jira, Loom, right? Basically, any cloud product that Atlassian sells, almost all of them, will show up in this list here. And for now, I have none, which is great. But what happens, again, for your convenience, Atlassian will very casually do this. They'll start giving user licenses away. And what this does, especially when this checkbox is not selected, what this does, it says, hey, if I let's pretend I'm in Slack, Peter, right? And I send you a link of like, check out this Jira issue or Jira work item, right? And it's just a hyperlink and you put it in a Slack message. Well, anybody in your 10,000 person company can see this Slack message, right? And if they click on it, because they're using their company email, which is going to be the domain that you've locked in here, then Jira's going to go, wait, I don't know who you are, but I'm supposed to give you a license to all these products. And so it's a very low barrier to entry to get into the tool, right? Very low overhead from an administrative perspective, but a licensing nightmare because now all of a sudden, if 10, 50, 150 people click on that link, well, you just gave away 150 licenses, right? Because these checkboxes, again, are set up, or these settings here are set up to conveniently give access to lower that technical barrier and lower that bureaucracy of like, how do we add users to our tools, right? And so this is there for that convenience. So at a minimum, my recommendation is JSM set as a customer. I think every person in your company should be a customer. And that basically allows any person in your company to be able to submit a request. This is especially true if you use JSM as an ITSM solution, right? Where you are essentially, allowing people to submit requests. And then for anything that you are going to give a license to, I would highly recommend you check the checkbox for admin approval, because then there's at least a little stop, a little pause that says, hey, so-and-so wants to join Jira, yay or nay. So you still get a little bit of a determination, because if you don't check the checkboxes, it's an automatic grant, right? Which again is great from a overhead perspective, horrible if you're trying to manage Jira on a budget.
This is actually giving me some great ideas. I've been working on an ebook, Alex, and I talk a little bit about managing configuration changes and, like a change advisory board and everything like that. But one thing I haven't talked about yet is license management. And now that you're calling this out, I'm thinking, wow, this is something that admins need to be aware of, or else, to your point, your license count can just skyrocket.
Yeah. And this is just, again, one example. And then down here we have, I like to notify every time, right? Because you never know, this problem gets, what's the right word here? This problem becomes exponentially worse the more admins you have. So the more cooks in the kitchen you have, like Peter, you can come in here and go, wait, why are these checkboxes required? I don't want them checked, even though I just checked them, right? Because we share the same organization. And so I like to keep this still so that in case something changes, like I can still get notified that they're coming in, right? And I've caught a lot of people, because what's nice is you'll get one of two emails. If you don't have the checkbox required, but you have this upper radio button selected, you're going to get an email every time somebody joins. So you'll get Timmy just joined Jira, awesome. But if you do the checkbox required, then it'll say Timmy's trying to access Jira, yay or nay. And so it's a nice little novelty here, but it'll save your bacon if you're, again, on a budget. Now that one's okay. That one is for the domain, and I think you should have a conversation with your team and figure out what makes sense strategically there. But the cardinal sin here is any domain. So this is literally anybody on the internet. You want to make sure this one's locked down tighter than Fort Knox, because, and I guess Fort Knox doesn't make sense to the Canadians in the room. But we have a saying, we have a little idiom here that Fort Knox is where we store all of our gold in the US. And so that thing's really, really locked down. So anyways, so this right here, right, you would want to probably make sure these are all off, or at the minimum, I would just give the customer to JSM. But when it comes to any domain out there, right, any email literally in the world, you probably don't want to be giving Jira licenses to people, right? These are $20 licenses per person.
Yeah.
So I'd highly recommend you turn that off. So that would be, again, one thing where a lot of people just get caught, right? It's automatically set up because one day you invited somebody at apple.com and all of a sudden anybody from apple.com can come in, right? And so it's very easy the way I would say sneaky. It's very sneaky the way Atlassian it makes it so convenient for the admins, not knowing that in a month from now, you're going to give Atlassian a very, very much bigger monthly bill.
I think it's a really good the advice you're giving now, Alex. It's a good what's the word I'm thinking of? It's a good vote for being proactive when it comes to Jira administration as opposed to reactive. It's a lot better to make sure you have those guardrails set up properly ahead of time, so you don't log on in one morning and see that there's 150 new users, right? Do your due diligence ahead of time, review the settings that we're talking about here, and you're going to save yourself pain in the long run.
But you also got to continuously check them because these settings can get moved by, again, if you have multiple org admins, somebody might be like, what does this button do? Let me click, right? And or again, just a very innocent, I'm going to invite somebody at apple.com because I'm working with them and I have the ability. Well, the moment that I invite somebody, right? So I can actually do this, right? If I would do like Bob at apple.com, fake email, I don't even know if there's a Bob out there, right? But if I were to do something like this and I send the invite, Atlassian's going to go, I think I get the pop-up. Let me see if it actually goes through. See, this little right here says skip the manual invitations, allow instant access. And the blue button naturally draws you to, yes, I want it. And then all of a sudden, anybody from apple.com is going to join your app instantly. And so these are these problems where, again, you're just not aware and you end up in these predicaments with being able to, accidentally, because it's just so easy, right? You just saw how easy it was for me to accidentally just add the entire apple.com domain.
Yeah, certainly. Well, yeah, I mean, definitely the first good thing to be aware of. You don't want random people joining, and you certainly don't want your license count to get too out of hand.
Yeah, and then the last thing, just to kind of be on the safe side too, there's user invites and invitation links. I would turn these off because again, this then enables not only the administrators, but any user to hand out licenses to people. And so you want to be very, very careful with these, right? You want to make sure that these are turned off or are not being used, especially the user invites, because this basically, especially these settings are not correct, right? It could, if you have them like set to invite anyone, like anybody in your company can invite anybody else, and then you're just in for a lot of trouble here. So just make sure you either don't allow or you require some admin approval. And even with the admin approval, you want to be careful because it's a race condition, right? If you have 5, 10, 15 admins, all 15 are going to get the email. And if all it takes is one person to go, yep, I approve, then you're just as bad off than not having it. So
I think there's an important element there too of if you have 15 admins, good to make sure you're aligned on your approach to those sorts of requests.
And you laugh, but it's a hard thing to do. So I have a picture. Well, you mind if we go off script a little bit?
You can do what you would like, Alex.
Okay. So this is another, I think this would be super valuable. I think a lot of people just don't normally understand how this works.
Yeah.
But administration on the Jira side or on the Atlassian side is very different. And let me see if I can find, I don't know. I was hoping I'd have a whiteboard. Let's just see if it lets me. Nope, it will. Oh, maybe. I don't know. Okay, I got one. It let me do one. So Atlassian administration works a little bit differently in the cloud than it does in the data center. And so at the very top, we have something called an org admin. This is the individual. Everything I was just showing you is really only visible by the org admin. And so the org admin has basically the keys to all the kingdom, and they're the highest, most powerful individual in the land. Okay, you want to have the most lowest number of org admins possible, in my 2 cents. Okay, below the org admin, we're going to have what's called the site admin. Now, this may or may not be true to you. So before you all go crazy in the chat here, the site admin, Atlassian has like 3 different flavors of admin.atlassian.com. They have a legacy view, which a lot of folks that jumped into the enterprise early on are still on. Then there's this concept of org admin and site admin in the newer version of the cloud. And then the latest, most greatest version of the cloud just has the org admin. There's no more site admin. But a lot of enterprise users have the site admin still because what typically happens is every site has the ability to have an admin, right? And do you know the differences between the sites, Peter? Or
Yeah, like different URLs within the same
yeah,
organization, essentially.
correct.
Yeah.
So let's assume that we were like apple.com here, right? This would be the site Apple, but then I would have like Apple engineering Atlassian.net, and then I would have like, I don't know, Apple QA.Atlassian.net or something like that, right? So you can have multiple sites. So in larger organizations, right, especially when you start hitting the 10, 50, 100,000 user companies, it's very common for you to have different site admins for the different sites, because it's just it's a lot of users, right? A lot of users for one admin. But your org admins, right? Typically, when you have folks that need to access the multiple sites, I've been in organizations with 20, 22 different Jiras. I have more admins. I have more org admins than I would like, for the simple fact that I have multiple site admins that need to access multiple sites. And so again, the problem just becomes worse. And so you want to try to be careful with your org admins, but there's only so much you can do.
Mhm.
And then to kind of just end this conversation, we then have administrators. These are going to be both Connie and Jira, Confluence and Jira. Then we're going to have the Jira admin, flanked by the Connie admin.
I've never heard Confluence called Connie before.
You haven't? It's the
I've
internal
never.
code word. It's what they call it inside.
It's the code word. Okay,
Yeah.
fancy. Well, hey, we got some inside knowledge now.
Yeah. And then you have the new coveted space admin, which is now the same in both, because projects became spaces. So you have a space admin, or what was used to be called a project admin. So that's the lowest level. You can have 1,000,000 project admins, 1,000,000 space admins. You're going to run into the least amount of problem there. Your Jira admin can only do Jira administration. Your Confluence admin can only do Confluence administration. Your administrator can do both. Your site can do both plus manage users. And then your org admin can do everything, all the above. So that's a little quick breakdown of user management in the cloud. Is it Connie or Connie? So it's definitely, from how I've seen it, it's Connie.
Mm.
That's
As
how I
somebody who
saw it.
hasn't seen it before, I would have gone the IE route as well, Connie, but hey.
Yep. So anyway, so that's a quick little Atlassian administration 101. I think a lot of people usually get confused by that, because there's just so many different levels of what you can and can't do. So that's a quick little primer. All right, so back to our regularly scheduled agenda. Why don't we transition over to Atlassian Guard? And so I'll start off with kind of describing what Guard is. So Guard is a separate billing entry. So it's like it has its own, entry into your bill. And Atlassian Guard basically helps you, as the name implies, guard your Atlassian instance. And so it has protective measures because it's a guard, right? It's designed to help you do, from a cybersecurity perspective, a lot more good things. Unfortunately, it costs a good amount of money, right? It's like an extra like $5 per user per month. Now, if you're in the enterprise versions of these Atlassian tools, then Guard comes included, which also comes with its own complications. But for the most part, a lot of organizations, at least the ones that take their cybersecurity very seriously, also subscribe to Atlassian Guard. Now, with Guard comes some gotchas, some things that you got to know that I think a lot of people should be aware of, because a lot of people know Guard can do two things. It can do user provisioning and user authentication. That's like the bare bones. It used to be called Atlassian Access, which meant gives me access to Atlassian, right? But then Atlassian started adding all these cybersecurity capabilities, which it evolved into Atlassian Guard, but it still retains that access part, right? The user provisioning and the user authentication. But as I mentioned, Guard goes way, way beyond just providing access to your Atlassian tools. And I'm going to walk you through some gotchas and some things that you got to be aware of, especially when you're dealing with Guard. Okay, so the first one is going to be on the topic of API management. So APIs are something that your team can basically create, right? And so in admin.atlassian.com, well, actually, any particular user, I don't even need to go to admin.atlassian.com, but any particular user that is logged into any of the Atlassian tools, they can just go to their profile up here. And I think they just go to profile. And under profile, there's going to be a section. Maybe it wasn't profile. It's one of these up here. Account settings, I think, is the right one. And I probably shouldn't be sharing my account settings, so don't everybody know. Look, there's a security section, and there's a API token section. So every single user can get to this page and create an API token. And API tokens allow you as a user to connect, talk with another application. Now, any cybersecurity experts in the room here should have their their spidey senses tingling because anytime that you are opening up communications between two tools, that's a vulnerability, right? That's an opportunity for bad things to potentially happen. Obviously, they don't always happen, but the pessimistic in me will assume bad things will happen. And so you sometimes don't want to allow companies or users to have API tokens, or you want to limit how um, the expiration of those API tokens. So fun little fact, like 2 years ago, API tokens were indefinite. Like you made one and it would live forever. About a year and a half ago, 18 months ago, maybe 20 months ago, Atlassian finally said, you know what, we're going to have these expire in a year. I don't know why it took him. Atlassian Cloud, I think, was introduced like in 2012. So I don't know why it took him like 15 years to get that feature enabled. But yeah, we have a question here. Is Atlassian Guard included in the Teamwork collection? So Atlassian Guard is available for the Teamwork collection, but my understanding, and unless Atlassian changed their billing recently, Atlassian Guard should only be packaged at the enterprise. But it looks like premium might come with it now.
And I was just taking a look at that one as well, Alex, because I know Atlassian, lots of changes to their product offerings quite frequently, as with the API content you're talking about now, changes. But it does look like at the current offering, Teamwork Collection, you get Atlassian Guard Standard included with Premium and Enterprise Teamwork Collection.
Perfect. Yeah. So it used to be that only your Premium had Guard included. So it's good that Atlassian has given us a little something at the Premium level. But yeah, that's a good one. So, okay. So why do we care for Guard though, right? Like why is Guard important? Well, again, these APIs, anybody can open them up and they last up to a year. But if you have stricter policies, I'm going to zoom in here because I can't get a good picture. If you have stricter policies, you're allowed to create what's called an authentication policy. This is a Guard feature. And you can create multiple authentication policies. Most companies just have one, which is bring my users in, right? Bring them in through Okta or Microsoft 365 or whatever you're using, and then the buck stops there. But if you notice down here on the left-hand side, we have API tokens. Are they allowed or not? So if you wanted to reject, right? If you want to say, hey, this group of people cannot use authentication policy, or sorry, any APIs, you can put them into a policy that has that turned off. And if you say these super users can use APIs, well, you create a new authentication policy and put only those users in that policy that does have the allow. And then the other thing that you can do is expire the tokens. So again, out of the box, it's 365 days. You can force it to about, I think, a week is the lowest number or something like that. It's a small number. But on average, you can do like 30 days. So this is a newer feature, newer capability that probably 8-9 months old. James asks, with Guard, how do you keep the security policies from adding too much friction for admins? Well, that's a very good question. Communication, I think, is what you got to do here, right? Because the unfortunate part about authentication policies is that this happens at the organization level, right? So me creating an authentication policy is not site specific, right? So if we go back and look at our picture, or auth policies and all security policies sit up here at the org. And unfortunately, especially in the cloud, let's just say you had like two major business units in your company, like engineering and IT, which are usually not the same business unit, right? Because one's a cost center and one's not. If they have to now work together, but they usually clash together, right? Because there's different colors of budgets, different colors of money. And so now they have to work together. So I don't think that there's a good answer for me, James, on like how do we keep security policies from adding too much friction for admins, other than you all gotta kumbaya your way through it. You have to share. It's a shared environment, so you have to just kind of all agree on what you're doing and only add what you need to kind of help with that friction. Okay, but anyways, I just wanted to call out that because of the nature of APIs, and again, 2 years ago, anybody can create an API that was indefinite, right? So it would last forever and ever. And so at least now by default, in fact, if any user creates an API token right now, it's going to default to 7 days. but you have the option to extend it up to 365 days. And now with this, you can enforce it. So now if you want to say, hey, as a company policy, we have 90-day policies. Well, you set this one to 90 days and then you can do 90 days from there. But it's great because again, it's just control that you have over the whole thing. Now, a newer feature that we're also going to get due to this great functionality. Oh boy, I'm not seeing it here. Where is it on mine? Well, anyway, so a newer feature that we have because of the APIs is that with Guard, you also do have the ability to see all your APIs. So there's an API section, and I might be missing it here. This is something that I probably should have had clicked before. Here we go. API keys at the bottom. So when you do, oh no, that's going to be a different thing. So there is a difference about API key. So we'll come back to that one. Let me see if I can find it. It's just not showing up. But all right, let me describe it to you. So there is with Guard, you now get a feature where it shows you every key that everybody in your organization has basically spawned into life. And so you have the ability to override and revoke your keys from that perspective now. It's over here on the left-hand side. I'm not sure where they put it. Atlassian likes to move everything on me.
I was just going to say, they love to move things on admins all the time. If you're a Jira admin, you've probably experienced the moving of different settings. But if you're also planning to move the Jira Cloud,
here we go.
It's nice because you don't have to manage the
Why
updates.
would they put it under insights and not under security?
I wish I could tell you.
I know. But here's every API token that is generated by anybody in your company. It'll show up here. You'll see when it was last used. You'll see when it expires. But the most important part is if for whatever reason you don't want that connection to happen, you can go and revoke it so that it can get stopped. So again, not that big of a concern, but like about a year ago, Atlassian did have an with another vendor who got hacked. And that vendor, because of the way the APIs were working, like Atlassian themselves went in and revoked the keys because it was a vulnerability. So food for thought there. Now, let's get into a fun one. There's this concept of shadow IT. In the chat, give me a little +1 on the chat or a thumbs up, whatever you can do in there. Have you guys ever heard of shadow IT? Because the shadow IT is a fun one. Shadow IT is definitely something that I think catches a lot of people by surprise, and you don't really know what this is because you get an email. You'll get an email saying like, "Hey, so and so just bought a new Jira," and you're like, "What the heck is this?" Right? And so shadow IT is a very interesting concept. It's one that I wish Atlassian would do better, and I do believe Atlassian can do better, but they choose not to do better, which is really heartbreaking to me. But essentially, in a nutshell, if I had to describe what the shadow IT concept is, we go back to this concept of your domain, right? And so when you approve a domain, right, when you own your domain, we're going to go back to our apple.com example, right? You are effectively paying for users to use Guard. Now, there's two ways that Guard gets billed. If your user accesses a Jira, right? If your user accesses a Jira that's part of your teamwork collection or just premium, right? Then there's nothing extra because as part of your monthly payment, because it's bundled with your teamwork collection premium or your teamwork collection enterprise, that the ability for that user to use their email to authenticate and be provisioned through Guard, it's free. Well, it's included in the price. You already pay for that user. Okay. So that's good. The problem becomes in one or two scenarios. If that user goes to like Bitbucket only, or maybe they go to Trello.com only, right? And they don't access your Jira, well, they just became a billable user, which we're going to cover next. But this is a scary thing because these individuals can go and basically buy their own Jira on their own as well, right? A Jira that's not part of your teamwork collection, a Jira that's not part of any enterprise or premium products that your organization bought, right? And so I can go, like if I have my alex@solcoro.com email, I could go to atlassian.com and buy Jira, right? Free for 10 users, right? But because I'm using my Solcoro email and because I have not accessing any official Solcoro Jira, I then just bought an account. I just bought a new product and it becomes a discovered product, and it becomes part of the shadow IT, right? So this is one of the downfalls to this Atlassian Guard, is that because of the way Atlassian ties your hands, any individual, and these don't have to be licensed users, right? These don't have to be users that are actively in your Jira or actively in your Confluence. They can be anybody, as long as they have your company's email address. They can go and buy their own Jiras. Again, Jira's free for up to 10 people, right? So you're not going to pay the monthly fee for their Jira or their Confluence or their Trello or their Bitbucket, but you are going to pay the $5 fee a month for the privilege of them using their company email to buy the product. Right. And so it just becomes a huge nightmare. Now, the last I checked, which again, this can all change in a matter of minutes here, but the last time I checked, if you are an enterprise customer, then only then do enterprise customers have the ability to stop people from buying products. My 2 cents, this should be available for everybody. I don't know why this is an enterprise only feature, but this is again where I think Atlassian definitely can do better. But you want to just basically go and check through your apps, through your Shadow IT section and your Shadow IT apps, and you're going to see a list of Confluence and Jiras that anybody basically went and bought. Maybe unintentional. Rogue, I think, is a strong word, but rogue is the appropriate word.
I think rogue is appropriate. I think too, like, especially if you think about the number of teams that are trying to find systems of work they can use. Different teams may not have a system. They just go, they say, cool, Jira, without even knowing their organization has a corporate site they might be able to join. I feel like that's quite common.
Right. No, it's so common for somebody to say, hey, I want a Jira, and the hoops to get officially into the Jira are just so tremendous that they're like, I'm just going to go to buy my own Jira and share it with my colleagues. And all of a sudden you're in this hole. Yeah. Right. So you just want to be careful. And this problem gets exacerbated even worse when you're Atlassian Guard, because you get billed. You as the organization, you get billed for that user's ability to use your company's email in their independent Jira. And so you want to keep a watchful eye on these shadow IT ones, because it's going to impact you. While you're not on the hook to pay for their Jira license, their Jira subscription, you are on the hook to pay for that ability to use your company's email, which is part of your Guard subscription. And so at the end of the year, Atlassian is going to very proudly send you a nice little bill for your billable users that will then include all those people that never accessed your Jira. And so you have 2 paths to solve this problem. Path number 1 is you give them access to one of the Jiras in your premium or enterprise collection, right? That'll solve the problem, because now they're accessing an actual Jira and Bob's your uncle. Or B, you create an authentication policy. So you go down here, you put a non-billable authentication policy, which basically kicks them out of your main policy, and then they lose their ability to use 2FA. But now you've opened up yourself as a company to a different cybersecurity vulnerability, because now they can't use 2FA or MFA to log into the Atlassian tools. And so you got to pick and choose your battles, I suppose.
Definitely. With I feel like with Atlassian Cloud administration, it's easy to build a list of tons and tons of things that you can check every single day. Establishing the routine of when to check different items, I feel like, is a way of making it manageable and sustainable.
Yeah. Absolutely. But those are some of my big ones. What we want to do in the last 10-15 minutes is go back to Jira and kind of give you a little bit of a Jira 101, right? In the cloud, there's one key capability, one key functionality that I absolutely hate. It's one of my least favorite functionalities in the cloud.
I have a funny feeling I know what it might be.
Does it start with the letter T?
I think it does, yeah.
So in the cloud, we have something called the team managed project. And I think team managed projects are the worst thing to have ever been invented. A lot of people feel strongly in the opposite direction, but I think that if you're an enterprise and you're trying to do any kind of standardization, right? If you're trying to establish any kind of processes or just some kind of unification across your enterprise, team managed projects are the bane of your existence, and they should not exist in your project. Now, unfortunately for you all, and what the first tip that we're going to give you here on how to manage this is, by default, again, for your convenience, Atlassian gives you it gives everyone the ability to create team managed projects. So the very first thing that I do when I jump on board a new client is we nip that out of the bud. We say no more team managed projects. And so the easiest way to do this, you do need to be a Jira admin to do this. Right? How do you manage team managed project connections? Right? So JP, so you don't manage the creation of it, you stop it all together, or you grant the ability to create the team managed projects to a finite group of people. I'm going to show you how to do that. So if you go to the gear on the top right corner, you go to System under Global Permissions. It's on the left hand side here. You're going to scroll all the way down because Atlassian does not make this easy for you to see. All the way at the very, very bottom, you have the Create Team Managed Projects. I'm going to zoom in for you guys so you can see that. All right. So the very last permission is the ability to create team managed projects. And this right here is like the stab in the heart with the twist. Public. What kind of a permission is that?
Not a good one.
Why would you let anybody be able to create a team managed project?
I think Atlassian wants new users to suffer a little bit by leaving that turned on, because I don't think you want that in any situation, to be
Not
honest.
in any situation at all. So what the first thing I do is delete this one. That's my first order of business. I delete the ability for the public, which means any licensed user, to do it, and then I leave it. I stop there. Right. My 2 cents is nobody in their right mind should ever create team managed projects. But that's just my very polarizing opinion. Now, if you do have a use case for team managed projects, mazel tov to you. I can't imagine a world where that is the case, but I would then still limit it to either your site or your org admins by doing this right here. And then you're going to basically answer JP's question here is how do you manage it? Well, you delete the public so that none of your users can do it. And you give the permission only to your admins. So whether you want to do your site admins, your org admins, your Jira admins, the administrator, right? We covered all of them moments ago. But this is what I would do as a minimum case if for whatever reason your company still has a use case of we want team managed projects.
Yeah. And I think just to echo your points, Alex, the whole concept of team managed projects is to allow even greater flexibility in how you use Jira than you have in sort of those standard company managed projects. The risk there, though, is that every team can decide exactly how they want to work. So for any kind of work that's happening at scale or for an enterprise, I can imagine that would lead to a lot of disjoint around what data are you tracking, how are you doing your reporting. There's difficulties with people moving from team to team and not knowing how the work is being delivered.
Yeah. Yeah, and then in the chat, because I'm trash talking the team managed projects, let me know, do you have this feature turned on? Do you have it turned off? Do you like team managed projects? Do you hate team managed projects? I'm just curious because I gave you a very polarizing soap opera here. And I'm just curious, did I piss half the audience or are you guys on Team Alex? Because I think we need to know in the chat.
I'd love to see in the chat too, Alex. I'll say I'm Team Alex on this one though.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So while people type that in, James wants to know, how do I find if someone else, it wasn't me, let them loose in the past? Luckily for you all, so there's 2 things that I can cover here. One that I'm going to be able to show you, one that I won't be able to show you, but I'll be able to describe to you. So inside of the same Jira settings, right? So if you go to the gear and you go to system, if you go down, there's going to be actually maybe it's up. If you go up, there's going to be an audit log, and this should show you some indication of who's creating the projects. So this is going to show you something. Now, in case you don't see it here for whatever reason, and if it went away, back in admin.atlassian.com, and it's going to take me a second here to figure out where they put it. Here we go. It's under insights. If you go to audit log, again, you do need to be a premium subscriber. But you can see here that every action will be recorded. And so you're going to want to go through that. And I'm going to quickly go away from there for security reasons, but your audit log should tell you every interaction over the last 180 days. So everything is logged in that in that audit log. So definitely go check out your audit log on admin.atlassian.com because it tracks everything. In case it's not in the audit log just for Jira. So we're getting Team Alex on James, Team Alex on Frederick. See, I tell people, like, I get a lot of hate because people like the team managed projects, but I don't understand why. It doesn't make sense.
I think there are good things about them, but I think that again, when it comes to scale and enterprises, they become risky. I think it's a great concept, but I think in practice they can be very challenging.
So I'll tell you a funny story. I think I might have given it to you, but definitely here for the audience watching. So I as you can tell, I don't like team managed projects. In fact, I have a T-shirt that says "Friends don't let friends make team managed projects," right?
Amazing.
And I just don't like team managed projects. And so I'm talking to the head of Jira one day, and I'm just going on how much I hate team managed projects, not knowing that before he became the head of Jira, he introduced team managed projects. And my entire team knew that he was the founding father of team managed projects, and they let me walk right into that trap because they knew I was going to talk about how much I hate team managed projects. In fact, I was interviewing Mike Cannon Brooks, the CEO of Atlassian, in April, like 7 months ago, and we had a script, right? I was told to be on my best behavior and follow a script because I tend to ramble and talk about how much I either love or hate Atlassian at any given point in the day. And so my team was like, "You're gonna get us in trouble with Atlassian's PR department if you go off script." So they made me stick to a script. So I'm going through my script, and I lost myself in the script. I asked Mike the same question twice because I just got lost. So I chucked my phone across the table, and I go, "Mike, why do team managed projects exist?"
Yeah, just double down at that point, right? You just double down into it.
But he gave me a great answer. And unfortunately, team managed projects aren't going to go anywhere. But fortunately, Atlassian acknowledges. So the way Mike, the CEO, described team managed projects is you have this concept of like these barriers to entry, right? Like team managed projects are great because the barrier to entry into the application is very, very low. And when you're trying to acquire 300,000 new customers, which is what Atlassian's mission is, you want their excuse of why they can't use your product to be as low as humanly possible. Jira has the stigma of being a software tool for software developers you need a lot of expertise. But Atlassian is trying to change that, right? They want it to be the tool for everyone, right?
Mhm.
And so they introduced this team managed project with good intents, but Atlassian acknowledges that it was more like a cliff that they went, and they wanted it to be a gradual slope, right? But it ended up not working out that way. So they're doing a lot of drastic improvements. I don't want to take credit for them, but maybe some of them were my ideas.
Maybe it was the throw the phone across the table and the start question right then and there. That really sparked the improvements.
Yeah, but Atlassian is acknowledging that team managed projects there's room for improvements, and they're continuously making improvements to make team managed projects that better middle ground. Because right now it's like on or off, and
Yeah.
you just can't have that.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, and I think to echo what you're saying, Alex, there has been a push from Atlassian to move towards like I don't this might be the phrase they use. I think it was like a Jira for everyone, or I feel like there was some slogan along those lines maybe at one point. But they truly are pushing kind of in that direction. Jira used to be that very much software development team oriented platform. But then, we have business projects and we've got different templates that are very much oriented towards different types of teams and not just software development teams. So I think, I've said it before, is there a use case for team managed? Yes, in some
Absolutely.
scenarios, but go forth with great caution, maybe is what I would say.
Yeah, but they are making very very much needed improvements. So for example, when you're adding fields to team managed projects, you can now access the global fields.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to have 20 different projects with 20 versions of the same field, because that's how they used to work. Now you can define it in your field section and pull it into the 20 team managed projects. So that's the step in the right direction.
Yeah.
And so I'm hopeful that Atlassian will do better. They have to do better because at one point Rovo will just be your admin.
Right. Right. So you want to keep things nice and like if Rovo is going to be your admin, you want to keep things nice and standard because if it's the phrase garbage in, garbage out can certainly exist with AI as well, right? AI is not
Absolutely.
perfect. I'm sure we've all tried to input information into and fix this email for me, and it spits out an email that's even worse than the original version I wrote.
Yeah.
So it's similar concept, right? Keep your environment clean, and Rovo is going to be able to do even more for you than you may have expected.
And
Yeah.
luckily for Jira admins today, right, we're not alone, right? And so there's a lot of tools. So Core making one of the great tools out there too, right? One of the newer tools out there on helping, right? Because this stuff can be a little overwhelming from time to time. And it's great to have like an extra third pair of eyes, right? Like that
Mhm.
are just there, they got your back, they're watching. Because I know where everything is. And even you saw me struggling because they move things on me, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm struggling and I'm using this tool 12, 14, 15 hours a day. Like you're not alone, right? That's why I love like initiatives like the ones from Solcoro to make tools that help the administrators, because this can be a daunting thing if you're alone. And so sometimes these tools are definitely worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, absolutely. And in case people are wondering, I obviously this is, we're so thankful to have had Alex on this call. I mean, we're coming up to sort of the end part of the webinar, and I want to give us a couple minutes for any remaining Q&A here. But I wanted to say, big thank you to Alex, one, for taking us through all the topics that we've gone through today. Solcoro is hosting this. If you're curious to learn more about who we are, we did just launch our product about a month and a half ago. You can check us out at solcoro.com. Or if you're curious, also feel free to just respond to the registration confirmation email that you received for this webinar. Well, let me ask you this question, Alex. As somebody who has always considered themselves, well, while we're waiting for questions in the chat, somebody who has always considered themselves a very type A organized Jira admin, do you have, when you're building a workflow in Jira, do you have a specific format you always use? Like, do each of your workflows look the same from one to the next,
Yeah,
or are they
it's
all
it's
spider webs?
it's so interesting you say that. So I've managed a Jira with a lot of different admins in there, and then I spend a lot of my time with other peers, right? With other expert level Jira admins. And we each uniquely have our own DNA in Jira. So I can look at any person's Jira and um I'll tell you a little story. So I was again big company looking at a Jira, and somebody made a change to a workflow, and they're like, "Hey Alex, why did you do this?" And I'm like, "Do this? I didn't do this." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're our Jira admin. You did this change. This is your workflow." I go, "That is not how I do workflows. Like I can look at any workflow and I can identify my workflows. I have a very specific way that I structure the boxes, the
Yep.
way I name things, the way I'm very particular on the bubble on from the transition from one status to the transition of another.
Yep.
I'm very meticulous and I have a very distinct style. Some people like to do the same arrow going both ways, right? So it's really hard to know which way you're going.
Mhm.
I like to do the outer circle, the outer bubbles to go one up, one down. And
Yes.
so if it's off by one, then I know that I wasn't there because I will always do the outer circle and the inner the two outer circles are my two or how I do the transitions.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I have my DNA of my little fingerprints of how I do my configurations, from my naming conventions, from how I draw the workflow itself. Like it's very unique to me, and I can see it whenever I see my own configurations. But I can also tell when somebody else is in there fiddling around because I'm like, this doesn't look like mine.
Yeah, no, I am the exact same way. I have a very specific, I step my workflow statuses. So the first one in the top left, then I step them
Mm,
down to the bottom right. Call them my forward transitions go this way, and my backwards transitions go this way.
okay,
But
yeah,
those tiny gray lines with when the forward and backward transitions are overlapping can be very tough to see where they're moving. So yes, I also have the same, like that, the markers of Peter was here once. They're out there. People would know.
yeah. No, I mean it's a little funny, but I think it's very true, right? Like, and I think
Yeah,
each of us as Jira admins, we have our little fingerprints that we put in Jira. But
yeah.
I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. What does break my heart though, there's other influencers out there on the internet. And I don't want to turn this into a bashing thing, but I was watching a video one time that had a lot of traction, and even though there's really no wrong way of teaching people how to use the Atlassian tools because there's no silver bullet here, there's
Mhm.
still like common sense, and it broke my heart. I was watching a video again. This video was getting thousands of views, and the guy had to describe the difference between a team managed project and a company managed project, and his answer was, if you have a team, you use team manage. If you work in a company, you use company. And I'm like, what kind of a advice is that? You can't be spreading this as gospel.
I was going to say, for those of you listening, don't take that
Don't-
advice. Please
yeah,
don't.
that is horrible advice. Don't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The number one cybersecurity mistake that admins make. I think in general, the cloud is pretty safe. But I think the number one mistake that we make is feeling secure that it's safe for us. Right. So basically ignoring guard. I would spend the money with guard because guard lets you do your IP whitelisting better. It lets you actually like regionize who's logging in from where in the world. It just gives you a lot more safety with respect to who's logging in and how they're logging in. Beacon, there's a product called Beacon that came out like 2 years ago that was like, it would show you if there was any rogue users, right? It would show you if a user was like deleting workflows. It would show you if like bad things or bad actors were in your Jira. And so that got folded into guard. So all that stuff, I think just taking for granted the fact that you don't own it, that it's in the cloud and that somebody else manages for you, I think is mistake number one. You still have to worry about this stuff.
And Beacon is now Guard Premium, right, Alex?
Right. Yeah. It's part of Guard Premium. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So what you'll see with Guard is Atlassian Guard is split into two. So standard and then premium. So those Beacon features are going to come in that elevated product offering.
Yeah, of course. Because, upsells in Atlassian.
Yeah. Atlassian, classic Atlassian.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Peter, for having me, and for everybody in the chat. Hope you enjoyed it. Do connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to share more knowledge, and bring me back whenever you want, Peter.
It's fantastic.
We only got through half our agenda, so.
Sorry, I missed that part.
We only got through half of our agenda, so we got.
I know it seems like we're destined to have another conversation where we finish off the topics we wanted to get through. But on behalf of myself, Stu, who was again our lovely producer, thank you for joining us here today. It's been great conversations. Everyone in the chat, thank you so much for attending today. We will be sending out a recording of the webinar, so keep an eye on your inboxes for that, hopefully within the next couple days or so. But it's been lovely to see you all here. Thank you for the participation, and we hope to see you in our next webinar. Keep an eye out. We'll be announcing it soon.